to our panel discussion on whether automation and productization can boost profitability without sucking the soul out of your team's work. We do events like this every month as a way for our members and our VIP guests to engage directly with the experts who contribute and collaborate with us here at the Digital Project Manager. For folks who don't know me, I'm Galen. I'm the co-founder of the Digital Project Manager. I'll be your host for today. I've also got with me an incredible group of very talented strategic leaders who have been transforming the face of agencies and the professional services industry at large. We've got Melissa Morris, Joe DiPaolo, and Brian Kessman. We do have some VIP guests in the audience today, so if that's you, welcome. This is just one of a series of monthly sessions that we hold for our members who get access to a number of other benefits, including our entire back catalog of session recordings, like these ones, our library of templates, resources, and mini courses, as well as our flagship certification course, Mastering Digital Project Management. You can join in on the fun by heading over to thedigitalprojectmanager.com/membership. Michael's already posted it in the chat. Thank you, Michael. Let's dive in. So today we are exploring whether the concepts of productization and automation automatically turn your teams into mindless assembly line workers, or whether it may be actually the key to keeping your team's unique artisanal differentiator alive and well within a pressurized commercial reality. So first, I thought maybe we could meet our panelists. I'm going to start with Melissa. Melissa, you are the founder of Agency Authority. You've been doing almost weekly live LinkedIn sessions where you're sharing your knowledge and your stories from leading agency client services teams. I'm just curious, like, what's been one of the most interesting and thought-provoking sessions you've had so far?
Yeah, they've definitely been a lot of fun, but I would say one of the most interesting, and it's always such an interesting and hot topic with lots of different opinions, but it was on time tracking.
Ooh, time tracking.
Oh, see, look at already. Ooh, see, we get spicy over there on LinkedIn with me, so come hang out.
Awesome. Two things that start a fist fight: agile versus waterfall, and time tracking.
So true.
Amazing. I'll shift over to Brian. Brian, you are the founder and principal consultant at Lodestar Agency Consulting. And you've been all up in my feed, basically giving knowledge away for free all the time when it comes to productizing value instead of productizing services. I'm wondering, what's the most surprising reaction you get when your concepts like start to land with some of the naysayers in the agency world when it comes to productization?
Yeah, great question. So there's an aha moment that happens, and it's when they realize, I think, that there's a whole different way to think about productization, that it doesn't have to really mean losing the ability to deliver customized or high-touch services to clients. At least the way that we do it, it's not about standardization, it's about creating structured flexibility.
Ooh.
So when you see that approach and what that can offer, it really lets your firm meet your clients exactly where they are with their needs. And there's ways that we do this where you can deliver better work, not templated work, better outcomes. We aim to kill the inefficiencies that you'd see with the traditional ways of customized scoping and building everything from scratch. So that's when really they start to see the potential there, right? and they piece together the benefits. So it's that key aha moment, and then we're off.
I love that. I can't wait to dive into that more because it sounds very appealing and probably the opposite of what a lot of people think when they think of productization.
Yeah, I think so.
Very cool. Last but not least, Mr. Joe DiPaolo. Joe, you are the Chief Strategy Officer and the Head of Product at Excello, which is a professional services automation platform for those who don't know Excello. But actually, your background in digital product leadership is like pretty extensive. I'm just curious, like, what got you into digital products and how does that translate into what you do at Excello?
Sure. I'm going to date myself a little bit, Galen, but I came out of school in the 90s, and it was the .com boom at that point in time. And I was lucky enough to start working at a startup. We were building digital products. I was a product manager, and really the rest of my career is somewhat history. I've spent the last 25 years working on digitizing workflows and products and bringing things to market that hopefully help our customers and their users do their business better. What I found is super important in my role as we're looking at building product and technology for the market is really deep market research, understanding our customer base, getting good feedback from customers and users. And that's ultimately what I bring to Excello, is that kind of approach to how we're thinking about our product, getting an understanding of what's going on in the market. Like Brian just talked about, flexibility that we can provide our customers, not kind of boxing them in, but giving them a product that helps them operate more effectively, deliver their product, differentiate themselves, while being more efficient. So that's been my hope, what I can bring to Excello anyways.
Boom. I love that. I love that ear to the ground approach. Especially when it comes to like SaaS products, and you've kind of lived it too, right?
Yep.
Like working at a startup, you kind of know that it can be messy.
Yep,
Not
sure.
everything's perfect and tidy, like some products may assume.
That's right.
Awesome. Love it. All right. Let me set the scene a little bit, if you'll indulge me. I would say this. I'd say that we're living in a time where teams are being asked to do more with less. I think we're seeing thinner margins. We're seeing fiercer competition. Overhead is getting more difficult to manage. And at the end of the day, even like with the best talent, like getting work done in a way that can help your people grow and thrive in their respective crafts is getting pretty tough. But sometimes when our teams hear words like productization and automation, they kind of think it's like selling out. It sounds like industrialization, and they don't really want to be part of an assembly line in a factory that makes generic widgets en masse. They are craftspeople. They are digital artisans. They are masters in the making. So then it comes down to this question, like, what is the answer? Like, how can we keep our people doing what they do best while the commercial marketplace is like closing its grip around us? Like, could we harness the power of productization and automation in a way that keeps our people doing gratifying work, as well as doing it at margins that allow our businesses to thrive and grow? Or is mass production without personality the only destination for the professional services industry? So that's like my thought starter and what we're going to dive into today. Hopefully I haven't overpromised there.
It was heavy, but I think we're ready.
Well, we'll find out. I thought maybe I would just kick things off with another big, heavy question, and maybe hear from each of you. Professional services business, like professional services as a business model, like, is that even automatable or productizable? Like, we talk often about, unique requirements and like ad hoc client requests, and you're servicing your clients and their needs are always different. How can you automate that? How can you productize that? What does that even look like from a feasibility model? Maybe I'll start with Brian.
Yeah. So I think a good place to start is what I was touching on before with I don't know if I said this, but I see two types of productization, right? There's two ways to do this. I think there's productizing services, which I talk about the differences between these two quite a bit. So productizing services, think about this. This is how most people think about productization. And it usually defined as we're bundling existing capabilities into fixed packages. But when you do that, you're not really changing anything else except for how you package and sell your offerings. And so in order to do that, the method starts with more of an inward focus. And that's a key piece. We're looking internally for repeatable, predictable services that we can productize and even automate if there's the opportunity, usually things that don't require deep insight or human intervention. And so these are also usually the most commoditized areas or price sensitive areas of a firm. We can increase efficiency, which is great, but it does also reinforce commoditization when we take this approach, looking at productizing existing services. So what I'd say instead, to combat commoditization and the traditional business model, all the challenges that you just said, we need to productize our value, or think about this as productizing your expertise, or in a more tangible form, productized solutions. And so to me, the word solutions there is really important because we're talking about a business model shift. So still professional services, but the goal is moving away from selling transactional services to selling more transformational results, transformational solutions. And so this doesn't start with the inward focus, and this starts with an outward focus, right? Identifying the outcomes that the agency's clients are looking for. And then when we can do that, we're able to really reimagine how the agency can now deliver those outcomes based on its unique strengths, not its commoditized offerings. And so we would think in terms of not services and deliverables, but we have to break down the agency's expertise into, I refer to these as more modules, right? With different ways that the agency can produce different types of outcomes. And when we have all those pieces on the table, we snap those modules together in different ways to create different structured frameworks and solutions to meet the most common client scenarios. But each also then has a different scope or different pricing options. And when we do this, it leads to huge benefits. We see greater deal size because we're not selling hours, we're not selling effort, we're not selling a deliverable or capability. You get better win rates from this. It's more appealing to clients. There's so many other benefits, but it allows us to balance the repeatability for the agency with flexibility and that customized approach for clients. It really creates the space for teams also internally to, I think, properly perform their strategy and creative work that usually gets sidelined because of the limited time that they have. But this time's already built into the solution, and it's paid for and it's guaranteed. And so from there we can, it's just the foundation, right? That's just the start. And there we think about where can we integrate AI? Where can we automate? But it's more at from a strategic angle, right? Because we've developed high margin solutions for your clients' most compelling challenges or most critical challenges.
There's so much I love about that. Because I think it really puts the challenge forward, like to say, listen, we need to deliver outcomes. Like doing a thing that it says in this document isn't enough. But also it's empowering because it's like, okay, you guys are all craftspeople. You're like artisans. You are masters of your craft. And we're not just going to bundle a bunch of offerings, and we're not going to follow this race to the bottom of like commodified widgets. We're actually going to package the value. That is the actual thing that we're selling. But also, the trade-off, or maybe the sort of price of that is that, like we have to be serious about what we're doing because we're making promises about the transformation that we're going to deliver.
That's right. And when we think about it, we're not limited by the list of capabilities, the menu of capabilities you'd normally see on an agency website. We're not tied to that anymore when we take this approach. We can think very differently and bigger picture. So yeah, it is transformational in itself in helping agencies be more transformational for their clients.
Boom. Love that. Melissa, you and I, we've chatted about like process and like team leadership. I know you take things, at a sort of a very human and sort of team oriented approach. What are your thoughts about like the automatable, productizable aspect of agency world, professional services in general?
Yeah, I think there's three things that an agency is considering when they're moving towards productization of their service. And that's going to be your niche, your specialization, and then frameworks, which is what Brian was touching on a lot as well. And your frameworks can feel almost modular. I think you would agree, like you have this piece and we plug it with this piece and we have it put together. And the thing there is when you are specializing in terms of your niche, who you're focused on, who you serve, and how you're serving them, they don't feel like it's not custom and speaking just to them because you know that audience so deeply, you know their needs so deeply. You could have almost the same conversation and they feel heard because they have the same needs. And so I think getting away from the idea that productization and automation means lack of personalization and feeling disconnected from our end user, I think it's quite the opposite, because I think the more we can get in that path and really deeply understand and create service offerings and packages and framework and understand that transformation so deeply, that person feels so heard that it starts to become a really easy yes. And then now you have this client getting these easy yeses. And because you have all these things in place, scaling that up is really easy to get templates, processes, SOPs, and the tools and workflows in place to support these offers.
I love that idea that the modularity doesn't make it feel impersonal to the client on the receiving end. And actually part of the value of being in professional services is that you have the perspective to see shared problems and deliver solutions for them, not generic solutions, but the right tool set to solve some of those challenges.
Yeah. And I think, over time, you're even showing up even better because I am seeing this time after time after time. I'm getting feedback. I understand my own internal processes when I have a productized service offering are getting even better. They're getting more refined. The resources I can provide to my clients and my end users are getting even better. So it's not just internally, I can scale and I can make more money. You're actually creating a bigger and better transformation for your clients as well.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I love that. Sorry, I'm typing into the chat as well. Some good comments going on here. Joe, I thought maybe I'd throw to you as well, just in terms of like maybe from that automation angle. You know, obviously what you and your team does is a lot around professional services automation. Like, what are some of the like challenges that folks face when wrapping their head around automation, and maybe even the extents of it? Like, where does it end? Where it's like, actually, don't automate this.
Yeah, I mean, I really align with a lot of what Brian and Melissa have said here. Obviously, you know, professional service business is there to deliver some expertise or something unique to the market. And it's really important that companies are able to leverage their uniqueness and build differentiation into how they're leveraging technology, whether that's productizing it and, using that to put together packaging, like Brian said, that's gonna benefit them if they can maintain that differentiation. And then Melissa's talked about frameworks, and that's really where a tool like ours, like Excello, comes into place, where if you can build things so that you can deliver a better customer experience or make things more repeatable, or honestly take care of some of the more monotonous things that you have to do from a business perspective to operate and do that efficiently and effectively and in a more repeatable way, you can focus on the things that are going to allow you to deliver value to your customer and deliver outcomes that are meaningful. And that's what's going to earn you repeat business. And that's what's going to allow you to continue to present meaningful outcomes, like Brian said. So I think that's, certainly we're looking at it from a tooling and operational support perspective, and making sure businesses and leaders and professional services organizations can focus on their core competencies and the things that drive differentiation.
Mm-hmm. I like that. It's funny because like automation is not necessarily new, and yet that mindset around automation and generative AI today is kind of similar, right? It's like, how can we use it to elevate ourselves? And I think, I see the comments in the chat, and it's like, yes, we are dealing with, we've got a panel here of folks who are incredibly intelligent and proponents of doing automation and productization the right way. I just added a little comment there, but we want to beat it up, because we want to find all of those rough edges. We want to find all the edge cases. We want to be able to, have a fruitful conversation about where it is the answer and also where it might not be. Because again, it's one of those things, just like any emerging technology or trend, it's gonna, there's a wrong way to do it too. There's a sort of unachievable expectation that some folks might have, but we're just trying to ground that and sort of make it practical for folks. Love all that. Actually, maybe in the spirit of that, I wondered if we can go down the path of like the trade-offs, right? Like just like no medicine is void of having some kind of side effect. What are the side effects here when it comes to automation and productization? And like, are we just like, where is that fine cliff's edge, right, where you could slide down and become this commodified widget factory? Where have we seen it gone wrong? And like, what is the trade-off in terms of like culture? I know we're saying all these things like, we're empowering people, we're packaging their value, we're creating great client experiences, we are delivering insights based on how we know we can solve shared challenges. But like, where is the give and take? And maybe I'll pick on Brian again.
Yeah, sure. Maybe I'll start. So I want to answer your question, but I also want to start with identifying a key risk of this model as well. And that's going to be market misalignment, right? If you build your solutions and they don't resonate with clients, you've built the wrong solution. I think, thinking of the SaaS world, right, equally, but that's what we're doing. We're really applying a lot of the SaaS playbook to the professional services space, and we can't have market misalignment. And so we want to make sure there's what I refer to as a solution market fit before we start to really redesign the agency's offerings. And so that's a key piece. But I think there's some misconceptions that are also tied to trade-offs. I think one, there's the misconception, I think we talked about it before, which is that productization means cookie cutter deliverables, or that it means that the work's going to become repetitive and then boring. And that's not why a lot of people have joined the agencies. Mm-hmm. And so What we're actually doing, though, is, and I think Melissa said it before, is we're creating repeatable frameworks for solving similar types of problems, not cookie cutter work in any way. And you said it, Galen, every client is very different. And because every client is different, it might be a similar flavor problem, but the work will still be different to solve it for that client, for their dimension of that problem. And so, we'll go ahead and we'll create baseline solutions, but we're not creating standardized solutions. For me, there's a difference. And the baseline solutions and the programs and the products, so that you're not reinventing the wheel. We're not starting from a place where we have to, create something from scratch. Again, it's the snapping together of those different baseline offerings that then we can still customize. But again, balanced with the repeatability. And when you apply different pricing approaches, offering different tailored options for further customization, or the idea of an add-on if you truly need customization, there's always the option. You can be as creative as you want with how you structure your scopes and your pricing. But again, you're not starting from scratch. We're not pricing time. We're not selling effort. We're no longer operating in a commoditized space. And what that does is drastically changes the client relationship and the business model, and it future-proofs the firm, setting it up for further automation, to adopt AI for impact rather than efficiency, and get paid for it, which is really the challenge today, I think.
Could you throw us an example? I'm also looking at Maggie's question here, just like clarifying what we mean by packaging value. It's something that kind of gets thrown around, but like, yeah, as an example, maybe from an agency model, like what is the pitch, I guess I would say, in terms of the value, and like how does that translate back into like these sort of repeatable frameworks?
Yeah, well, so it's going to depend on what your agency does, right? There's an example that I would point you all towards. I think it's method1.com. Method One's an agency that focuses on indulgence brands. And they have, I believe, 9 different solutions that came out of the program. We worked with them to help them do this. And so they represent this really well on their site. And you can see they're not talking about effort. They're not talking about services. They're talking about solutions. And each solution talks about the outcome. And that's what we want. Their expertise was knowledge around indulgence brands and their challenges in going to market and increasing market share. And so take a look at their offerings. Was I right with the URL? With the website? I don't know if anyone's looking. Anyway, but you'll see that's what we're talking about. So for them, you'll see offerings related to conversion or to awareness, but those are generic, right? Generic KPIs that you see in a lot of agencies. We go much deeper, and they have, and you can see that on their site. It's just one example, but.
No, I appreciate you sharing that example with us as well. I will leave it with someone backstage to try that URL. Brian, what was that again?
Yeah, I'm going to go on to the next question. I'm going to get the URL and I'll paste it in.
All right. I appreciate it. Yeah, I mean, maybe maybe I can go to Joe as well. Joe, and just in terms of like the rough edges and the trade-offs around, on the other side of the coin, like automation, like what have you seen in terms of like some of the trade-offs that you might need to manage expectations around when you're telling people like, this is not a magic bullet, those don't exist. You're going to do this, but like you might see this as well.
Yeah, I think Brian's exactly right. I mean, if agencies and organizations need to focus on their value add, any technology that they're leveraging that's going to, reduce or create friction with their value proposition, or change how they interact with customers, or do something that changes the way the customer perceives how they're delivering or the value or the outcome they're getting for that, that's certainly going to be problematic, right? I mean, that's obviously what we're trying to avoid. And I think, when he talked about implementing the methodology, it's focused on eliminating that, right? It's focused on figuring out how to, continue to have your value prop that you can, make sure customers understand, and you're leveraging technology to help you do that. I mean, that's when it's effective, right?
I like that. It's almost a transparency in the pitch, to begin with. It's like not same old stuff, but like we're using this to as an advantage. We're not trying to hide it, and we're not going down a path of like, yeah, now we are just a automated factory, but here's how we're using this technology. Love that.
Right. That's
super cool. I wonder if we can like dive into some of the like practical stuff, right? Because I know we've been talking sort of like high level about, operating models and like, how we can take some of these ideas to market. But, when it comes to actually implementing these things, I know there's a lot of folks who work in organizations with a lot of tooling, right? And maybe to a certain degree, right? These frameworks, these methods, these, repeatability, automation even, but maybe it's not all like it's not all necessarily like orchestrated. It's not like this like very well practiced choir necessarily. Joe, one thing that I've seen you talk about is like this notion of like an operating system for growth, for profitable growth, which means a lot of things. I thought maybe I could let you kind of explain what that means to you and why that's important.
Sure. So, as you said, I work for a company called Excello, and our goal is to deliver a SaaS platform that's for what we call professional services automation, right? Our goal is to help professional service orgs basically operate more effectively. And the way that we look at that is we want to help automate the quote to cash process. So that's everything from, how do I manage my customer relationships? How do I send quotes out? How do I brand those effectively? How do I manage the work that I'm delivering, whether that's a, really in-depth project, to the lowest level of detail, or, it's more role-based or recurring. To Brian's point, we try to be flexible in the way that we offer that. So you can have different templates and different approaches to doing that within the system. We have components for managing resources and understanding utilization, and invoicing and financial aspects. So really, when we look at our product strategy and our product development efforts, we think what resonates with clients is how do we help them optimize their business? How do we help them get insight into, from the data we collect into that they can leverage to help them make decisions and ultimately, identify risks and figure out how can I optimize, how can I grow more profitably? And that can be, a relatively small agency that just wants to have some foundational kind of technology to help them do that. Mm-hmm. Or it can be, medium and large size businesses that are just hitting a ceiling. And like you said, Galen, lots of times we find customers that will have many different kind of technologies that are somewhat siloed and independent. And we're trying to solve for that problem and really cover that full life cycle. And again, our feeling is, if we have some frameworks for helping people operate, if we can create some consistency and repeatability, but again, like what Brian said, our goal is not to like lock people into a specific way of doing business, but hopefully help them augment the way that they're doing that. They'll get those better insights, they'll get more information, they can operate at a more effective way, and ultimately they can focus on their value prop instead of how to send an invoice or collect time or something along those lines that's more mundane. And really, that's our goal at Excello. And again, like I said, that's driving our product strategy. It's how do we help our customers grow effectively and profitably. So hopefully that makes sense.
That was Joe's Oscars music cue. No,
yeah, there you
go. What I'm picturing is like, this like backbone, right? This like, quote to cash model that kind of like takes you through, but you're attaching whatever your business, like whatever makes your business unique, you're attaching into that. Yep. Not necessarily having this like, you must buy this one tool that's going to take over your business and you must run your business this way now, which by the way, I've seen a lot, right? Yep. Like, we're in the software selection process and we're like, gosh, like our business doesn't work this way. Like we'd have to change the way we operate in order to take advantage of this tool. Sounds to me like the operating system bit is like the almost invisible layer that things are plugging into.
Yeah, that's exactly our goal. And so we support a lot of different industries, a lot of different sizes of customers. And again, if we can be somewhat invisible, like you said, on the back end, but helping them scale and optimize, that's the goal.
Love that. I wonder if I can take it because like, in terms of like, we talk about scale, we talk about, tools and technology, and I wonder if I can just jut in the people bit, right? Because I think we've all seen it where the problem is not the technology sometimes, maybe it is, but I think a lot of the time it comes to like change management and culture, and how people receive this. And maybe I could just kind of fast forward into this idea that like, yes, we can put all these solutions in place, and yes, all of this sounds good for our clients, but how do we get buy-in, I guess? How do we get buy-in from our teams on changes? Like, hey, we're gonna like start implementing some automation. We're going to start, selling our offering in a more productized way. Like, how do we drive buy-in for changes like that and keep our people inspired to like keep doing great work? And I'm going to pick on Melissa for this one because you're my like people person.
You're like behind the scenes, she's not friendly at all, but
She's actually a robot, but a very friendly one.
Yeah, so I think anytime we're rolling out changes at an agency, you do need to be careful and sensitive to the team. And one thing I always tell the agency owners we're working with is, okay, you have come to me, you've come to agency authority, you've asked for help because you're butting up against your systems, you're butting up against your processes, you're feeling the bottlenecks, you're feeling overwhelmed. So are your team members. And so I think really first being sensitive to the fact that they are also feeling a lot of the pain that the agency owner's feeling, maybe the project manager who's brought this up is feeling. It's likely it's being felt a lot of places, right? So I say there are two key things to getting the team on board. It's education and training. And that might sound like the same thing to start, but I want to clarify a little bit more by what I mean on education. And that's with the why are we doing this? Bring them in and help them understand what is the desired outcome for these changes that we're implementing. It's not to micromanage. It's not to give you something else to check off your list. These are the goals. These are the direction that we're moving the agency in. And this is why it's going to help keep them updated on what progress is looking like. Sometimes I'm working with a project manager and an agency owner. We're having tons of conversations, right? We are talking about the tools. We're brainstorming, we're experimenting, and now it's ready. And we bring it to the team, and the team is like, oh, that's great. You've been working with Melissa for weeks, but we have no idea what's going on. We don't know what's happening. Keep them in the loop, bring them up to speed. So we always send an email to our primary point of contact that says, put this out to your team. Let them know who we are, what's about to happen, and what's going on. Educate them. Train. So many times, project managers, agency owner, whoever's rolling out leadership, it's like, well, we did the training call and I just don't understand. There's a lack of compliance with the tool. Well, 1 hour training call or 90-minute training call is not going to be enough. There are additional things we need to put in place. We need to make sure we're doing reminders. We need to do frequent trainings. We need for practice documents. We need to offer them videos, and need to keep in mind too that depending on who's on the team, there could be varying degrees of comfort with technology. People may have worked in project management tools or CRMs in the past, and some may not have. And so also being mindful, and then of course being mindful of any accessibility needs or challenges that an individual on your team may need some extra support with. So the point there is let's loop them in on the desired outcome. That does not mean they need to be involved in every decision along the way. I think too many cooks in the kitchen is a very real thing. But let's keep them updated and feel informed when appropriate, get their feedback, and then training and commit to training and reinforcement of the new tool.
Love that. And we have a call out for ADCAR in the chat as well. And the thing I wanted to call out is because I think I love that it's sort of baked into that process with the way you work with your clients. And also for folks who've been paying attention, like a lot of the like talking points and messaging about what we're doing and why, you can borrow from what any of the panelists are saying from the first 2 questions, right? It's like, yes, here's why we're doing this. And it's about, these frameworks, it's modularity, but it's not taking away from your craft. The idea is that you hopefully are able to, quote unquote, do your craft harder, which is not the words I mean to use, but it's the only thing that's popping into my head. But yeah, like deepen into doing the things that you love doing. And, Joe, even to the point where sort of, I don't know, less sexy business things are kind of like they happen, like let's automate those and let's like focus on the work. But I think that's super cool. Brian, you're someone else, you're directly interfacing with organizations who are, taking some of these ideas around productizing value and implementing them. What are some of the challenges that you see them face with their people, and how are they overcoming it? Is it similar to, what Melissa is saying? Where have you seen people kind of step in it?
Nicely put. I think, this is true whether you're driving change and adoption for a business model, for software, for a process. It's it all comes down to people. And I think a couple key questions. I agree 100% with everything Melissa said. And as another layer to that, maybe it's, how do we answer the questions that's on everybody's mind, which is, how is it going to impact me? How is it going to impact my role or my work? Or what do I need to do? What do I need to learn? What do I need to worry about? And these are points that Melissa was sharing before, right? And so you share the vision or the outcomes. But there is another thing that we've used, which also works, and it's creating a pilot team, just carving out a small group to really test the change, but specifically with people who are open to experimenting, that aren't going to fight it, but they're open to it and excited about it and willing to test and work through potential challenges. And we provide the right support. And as Melissa was saying, training and education, key pieces, but also is having them share back what they've learned, where they failed, what their successes were with the agency, because it gets other people excited about it. It creates credibility. This is approachable. We can do this. And ultimately, I mean, the real thing we're doing is trying to create an environment where people who are going to be impacted by the change are also involved in designing that change. Because we don't ever want the experience to be something being done to any group, right? Where I think the first example that Melissa shared was kind of that thing, right? Here's our change, here's what we're doing, but it should be something where everybody has a say or can participate in. And I think the approach that Melissa shared is a great way to do that.
I like the feedback loop, and like that it is kind of an experiment for any, it's a new thing at an organization. It's a new way to work. I think that's a really good, like, it's a strong model. I was gonna I'm gonna go into like futurist stuff in a bit, but I actually thought I realized I made Brian kind of like give an example on productization, and I wonder if maybe I haven't given enough time, and if I can put Joe on the spot to kind of think about like what an automation could look like to folks working in a professional services environment. Like what is an example? I know we talked about sort of like billing. We talked about some of the sort of business admin, but like I feel like boots on the ground, like working on a project. Maybe you're a project manager, maybe you're a specialist on that team, and we're coming in and we're saying, hey, listen, we're going to automate parts of your job. It's going to be great. Like what is an example of what you might automate sort of, and why?
I think one of the things is that I was talking about with a customer this week that's sort of fresh in my head is just resource planning and understanding upcoming work in the pipeline. And, you can automate and better understand people's schedules, their skill sets, their roles, and then try to figure out how can I effectively best leverage my team, drive interesting work to them that they're aligned with, those kinds of things. And as teams grow and get bigger, that becomes harder and harder for agencies to do. And I think, technology can certainly help with that, and also find the right, going back to the value proposition and delivering that for your customers, find the people in your organization that are going to help you do that the best. So that, Galen, is just something I had a conversation with yesterday with a customer. So that's why it came to mind, but that's certainly something that can be automated. And like you said, sort of be behind the scenes, but help a project manager or a director looking across their business and wanting to see how am I going to most effectively use my team.
I really like that example, because I think a lot of us kind of like, I think of like whatever RPA and like process automation to be like cool, like approval workflow or something, right? Which I'm sure, we can do that too. But like, that's where my head goes to like, okay, yeah, something like, a straight line administrative headache. Let's automate that. But I love this idea that it's like we can automate, something like resourcing at scale, and something that is very people oriented around like, okay, what do people want to be doing, and can I put a little process or automation in place to kind of like remind me of like how I can resource a project, how I can be there for my people. I think that's actually really neat. That's a good one.
Good. Well, I can keep going if you want, Galen, but I'll let you.
Well, I'll let someone ask the question in Q&A time to be like, Joe, can you go into that a little bit more? Wink. But I thought, like, I think just to kind of like draw it all back. I mean, I know we started with this question, like, can we still keep our edge, and keep doing really high quality, sort of like masterful creative work in a professional services environment, and also be looking at productization, be looking at automation to make our businesses more efficient. Is this going to stamp the soul out of everything? I know we kind of like bias towards the answer being no, and I know we all have our own, personal biases as well. But I think the other thing is um, is this going to be the new norm? Like, I know some folks are going like, okay, well, like, yeah, automation, productization might just be a trend, right? Current state of the market, but like, I think a lot of professional services organizations and like companies in general right now, like everyone's needing to do more with less. And some people could be like, yeah, it's just a temporary thing, but then we'll get back to it. Like we'll get back to prosperity again, and like the economy won't scrunch us so hard. Or actually, is this not temporary? This is the new normal. Every business is going to need to explore this to stay competitive. Um, maybe I'll pick on Joe again.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think it's the new norm. I mean, I think there's, consistently higher and higher expectations from customers, more focus on, profit and financial metrics and being able to do more with less, kind of as you said, Galen. So I think it's businesses are going to have to continue to evolve and continue to take advantage of automation the best way they can, and leverage, keep delivering value and finding that balance. And it's certainly, I think, part of any operators responsibility and day-to-day type of activities as they're moving their business forward. So that's as you said, a little bit biased, but that's my opinion on it, and I'll stick with it.
Fair enough. Melissa, your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I would be so brazen as to say it's not new. It's actually a new iteration of what productization looks like. But this notion has been around. I mean, it was referenced in the late 1980s, really exploding and changing in the late 1990s when, internet, social media, bloggers. Now we've moved on to Google ads and influencers, and really this idea that I have a business and it depends on the geography that I'm in. It's just not the case anymore. Mm-hmm. And so now that we have increased audience, because I can reach anybody in the world, that also means I have increased competition. This means it's more difficult for the end user to discern, well, what's this copywriter going to do instead of this copywriter going to do? I'm not just going to go to the, handful of agencies that are nearby in town, interview them all and make a selection. Mm-hmm. I need a way to far more easily and quickly start to discern who is the best fit for me. Mm-hmm. And when someone has a productized service and I can very quickly understand the scope, the deliverables, they have frameworks, they have a specialization, they're niched. I'm like, I know what works for me. And so I really think it's helping with the decision-making process. And that's not going to go away. If anything, I think we're going to continue to see new iterations of it, especially with everything rolling out with AI. So definitely this is here. Yeah. And I think it's things you need to be considering and looking at how they're going to impact your agency and how you need to move and adjust and adapt to this new iteration of a productized service offering.
I like those notions that, like, yes, A, it's not new. B, actually, your framework might not blend you into the pack. It actually might make you stand out. That's actually very cool. We talk about Wirecutter a lot internally. Like, you have a method to arrive at their review of that, waffle iron you're thinking of buying. Like, that's what makes them unique. And if you were to transpose that into professional services, I know it's a stretch. But
I do love waffles, though, so I'm kind of resonating.
Good framework for reviewing a waffle iron. Yeah, who doesn't need it? Brian, what do you think? Is this are people going to get left behind if they're not thinking about this now?
Yeah, I think that's a hard yes. I think building on what Melissa was saying, this is just a natural evolution of professional services. We're seeing so many different industries evolve as a result of market conditions and AI, and business models just are not sustainable if you are especially billing by the hour, right? Not anymore. And so this changes the business model. If you do it right, you're not just rebundling services and selling them differently, but you're rethinking your value. And there's more change to come, as Melissa was saying. But I think it's important to reframe the idea that it's limiting in any way. It's more liberating because of your focus and the efficiency and the effectiveness, and you can just get better at it over time. And you can still scale the business, right? Because you're solving problems that your firm is especially good at, and you can now start to solve similar problems for other markets, for other industries. You could go to different industries and apply similar frameworks, but to different problems. So there's still ways to expand and find interesting work. I mean, this is how professional service firms are going to future-proof their business models. And to your first question, will they survive if they don't? I don't know, because there does need to be some change, right? The firms that will continue selling time will be highly commoditized, and their margins will struggle, and there'll be a lot of challenges. So I think what we're talking about here is really the foundation, just the starting point for sustainable growth in the years ahead.
Boom. And it actually ties it back to what Melissa was saying at the beginning about time tracking. I mean, it doesn't mean that you won't have to track your time, but in that model where you're like justifying that like the quarter hour you spent on this thing is worth money, yeah, maybe we can get away from that, and it's like more of a value model. I appreciate that. Yeah. All right, we've only got 13 minutes left, and I promised 50 minutes for Q&A, so I'm already behind. But before we get into Q&A, I just wanted to share just a few announcements and some bonus resources for today that we have for you for joining us live and attending. So first of all, Joe and the team at Excello have put together a pretty comprehensive guide to help you just like unify your operations and enhance the visibility of real-time data and drive profitable growth. It's available for free. And it should show up on your screen now in some way, shape, or form. I think a modal, probably a pop-up. Feel free to follow that link to download the white paper. If you're tuning in on mobile, or if you're like scrambling to find the right browser tab for this call before the link disappears, don't worry. We're going to be sending it out via email immediately after this event as well. The other thing I want to say, yeah, Michael, okay, it slides out. All right, it doesn't show on my screen as a host. I get it now. If you're enjoying this conversation, we do this all the time. So I'd love to see you at our next event, which is actually an exploration into, we're actually talking to 3 project managers who've rebuilt their careers after a layoff. I know that's been a very sort of common occurrence, unfortunately, but this is kind of an optimistic take on, what it can mean for your career. You can RSVP using the link that Michael has just posted or will be posting in chat shortly. And if you are a guest today and you want to continue the conversation by becoming a member of our community, again, feel free to come check us out, thedigitalprojectmanager.com/membership. And then the last announcement is selfishly, I really like feedback. So whether now or after the Q&A, we're going to post the survey in the chat as well. If you could take a minute to let us know what you thought of today's session, maybe submit a topic that you'd like to see us cover in the future. That's what we're all about. We like that feedback loop. We want to hear from you. We want ideas of what you'd like to see in the future and how we can improve. Michael's going to post all of that stuff in the chat, and I am going to shift into a bit of Q&A. And I think I'll start with this question about like getting started with automation. So the question is, when starting automation, what's the rule of thumb or like some heuristics that you follow to not waste too much time on a red herring? And maybe I will direct this at Joe first because I'm sure you have a perspective on this. But yes, I could definitely see where that could go, right? It's like, oh, let's automate everything. And then you start spending all this time trying to automate stuff that just really doesn't make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, it's really having a clear goal as you start looking at something, right? You have to find something that's going to be meaningful for your organization, that's going to have high impact, and then hopefully define some way that you're going to measure that, a return on investment, or prove that you've delivered value by implementing that kind of automation. So that would be kind of my recommendation. And then, we've talked about it previously in this conversation. I mean, I think all this stuff should be iterative, right? You've got to, if you can start small, Melissa was talking about this with education and training and change management. If you can start small and identify kind of a key area that you can either measure or get value from early and build on that, that's going to be super helpful. You'll get get support within your organization, and you'll get value out of it from a business perspective.
Is there such thing as like too granular when it comes to goals? Because I think some folks, maybe me, are thinking like, oh yeah, looking for efficiency gains of 50 minutes per task, blah blah blah. Like, is that too narrow of an experiment, or could that actually be worthwhile?
I think it can be worthwhile, but I'd encourage people to start a little bit bigger, and then have a more of a strategy, and then kind of work down to that lower level of goals. So I think that you've got to understand the strategy and the value prop of your business, and where you can be impactful. And I think starting there and then working down is going to be the most effective way to think about automation and technologies that you can take advantage of.
I like that. I like the sort of iterative nature of it.
Yep.
Brian, Melissa, anything you want to add on to that?
No, I thought Joe covered it pretty well. I do something very similar. So I think it's ties to the value prop, ties to the business strategy, and just how do you prioritize the most impactful opportunities that'll give you the quickest impact.
Love it, love it, love it. Actually, this next question probably goes to Brian as well, but of course, anybody. Jocelyn's asking, maybe this is a bit specific, but if we are productizing services at an agency and no longer selling hours for effort, is time tracking still relevant? Melissa came back. And how does it fit into a productized framework? This notion, I guess, of time tracking. Jocelyn, let me know if I've interpreted that right.
It's an excellent question, and I think that there's different philosophies around this. So the beauty about going to the nice part about going to a productized model where you're no longer selling hours is that yes, you can eliminate time sheets because we know they've never been accurate anyway, and also you're no longer billing by them, and so they're no longer a measure of performance for the firm, right? Your ability to deliver the outcomes that your solutions promise is the measure of performance to the firm. However, it is still wise to use timesheets to establish the baseline level of effort for your new offerings. And so we always advise continue tracking time for 6 months, a year, until you're comfortable that you've seen all the variations of your different solutions and find an average across your different teams that deliver those solutions. And then now you know what it costs your firm to deliver. But that really shouldn't play into your pricing. It shouldn't be cost plus, right? We just want to know what's the bare minimum that we need to cover our costs internally. And then what's our capacity for how many of these products or solutions can we deliver in a year? So that's our product capacity for the year, and that determines our revenue and how much we need to sell for that year. So that those become your new metrics, your new KPIs. And it's all about accountability, so much more so now than it is about utilization, which is, of course, the culture that timesheets creates.
Mm-hmm. No, I love that. And like we do that as well because we have a bunch of folks from like agency background. So we're like wired to time track, but we use it as data more than it's like a sort of justification of somebody's value, and far fewer conversations with clients going like, hey, like, what was this hour for? And no, I'm not going to pay you for it. Right. Like it's just like a measure of our sort of operation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would add to that also that I think there's opportunities, particularly in agencies, at least the agencies I work with, where they're often moving and scaling quickly. These periods of time, of quick change, scaling and such, I think it's another good opportunity to bring back that time tracking, because you may often be in a phase where you're pushing certain team members to capacity, others are not moving to capacity. You may be needing to hire. Are the price point, like, as we're looking right now, people are requesting higher wages and such, with the political and economic landscape. And so trying to continue to make sure that things are in alignment there as expenses are going up. Do we need to do a price increase? Are we still okay? Capacity wise, do we really need to bring on a new designer? And then something I always remind people of, especially being sensitive to that, we can't always just up the rate. There are other ways to improve profitability, and that is tighten scope. You can increase the rate and you can tighten scope. So that's something else you could start to look at in your timesheets is this piece takes a considerable amount of time, but what value is this really bringing to the table? Can we do this in a little bit different way? Could we find a new tool? Could we use some AI? What can we do to tighten that up? And then we can keep our price the same. We don't have to bring on a new team member. And we're still delivering the quality product and transformation that we've promised.
Love that. I love the sort of capacity planning angle. It's like an operational level as well.
Yeah.
Well, and Galen, if I could jump in, I align. I don't think that companies should be thinking about pricing or doing some of those things based on hours, but I do think there's a lot of valuable information here. And I think it's an area that we're seeing AI drive benefit to agencies, is that if I know certain types of tasks or certain types of work take longer than my framework calls for, that's something that I can bring back into my business and figure out, how do I optimize this? How do I tighten scope, as Melissa said, or how do I account for this and manage that effectively? And having that data is important to leverage and do things like that. So I think that's where you get the value, not necessarily driving it as your main KPI, but leveraging that as a tool to help you do your business better or deliver better.
Love that. Love that. I'm going to try and sneak 2 questions in. So, because there's one that I really like, both actually I really like, and I'm like, can I squeeze them in? I'm going to try. I'm going to start with Rachel's question because I think it's really apt. Her question is, how would you recommend that project managers upskill their automation skills? And I like that it's sort of like at this sort of level. I know we've been talking high and operationally and at a business level, but yeah, I think it's a really good question about like, you know, what skill can an individual on a team or a project manager, like, how can they level up on automation? I'll crack that open to anybody.
I'll take that one. So often I see people when AI automation, they think, how can we be leveraging this in our business? How can we be leveraging this in our business? And I think this is coming back to something Joe said earlier and what we've talked a little bit about here. What is the desired outcome? Don't bring in AI and automation for the sake of bringing in AI automation. Don't look at your project manager and say, go learn about AI. What problem are you trying to solve? So I think that's where we look first. Where are we finding inefficiencies in our agency? Where are the bottlenecks that are happening? Okay, now let's go see the automation and the AI that can come back and support that. So I'm always a big fan. Workflow first, tool second. And so many times people get that flipped. They go and find a tool and then they try and cram their to-do list in it and cram a bunch of tasks in it. And they just feel frustrated and it's not saving them time, or they're tool hopping and they're bouncing all around. Oh, this tool doesn't work. Great. But if you're really clear on your workflow and you're really clear on what a tool needs to do for you, and in this case, what would automation do for you? How would AI make this move faster? Now we've got something to work with. So please don't task your project manager with going and getting, more automated. Say, here are problems that we have in our agency. Can you go research ways that automation and AI can support that? And then I usually encourage agency owners to look to your own tools first. I see sometimes agency owners, they have like 2 project management tools. Okay, that can start to get cumbersome and it can start to get confusing. So look to your own tool stack first, get deeply knowledgeable on that. And then if it really doesn't fit the bill, now let's go exploring outward.
Boom. I love that. I'm going to try and sneak in this one last question. Maybe we can do the fast yay or nay, because I wanted to get into Jared's question. We've been talking about productization and automation. Specifically, I think productization. Jared's question is, can we do a 2-pronged approach? Like, is it okay to do both, where like you have a set of productized value and then maybe some really custom projects? Maybe I'll start with Brian and we can do a quick yay or nay.
Yeah, it's problematic. I think the goal here is to divest your price sensitive, lower value, commoditized offerings, or find the partner or do something. But it's also not flipping a switch. It doesn't happen today, right? So it's more about the vision is only start to offer the higher value services and solutions and start to continue to build those out and start to retire some of your price sensitive offerings. And it takes time to get there. So it's not flipping a switch. I totally get the challenge of that. Starting tomorrow, it's impossible to do that, right? Especially if the bulk of your business, like many agencies have, is in execution and production. But that's been the problem. So we want to shift away from that to more strategic or advisory type of offerings or something else that's higher end.
Like it's a journey, not a flip switch. Flip. I know we're out of time. Maybe I'll wrap it there. So I just want to say to everyone in the audience, I know some folks have left to the next meeting, but if you're still around, I just want to say a big thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of this. Of course, thank you to our wonderful panelists. Thank you for volunteering your time for this. And again, we have posted a feedback survey. It's in the chat. I think it's pinned somewhere. Let us know what you thought of today's session. Submit a topic that we should cover in the future. And I'll let you carry on with the rest of your Thursday. We decided that it's not Friday. It's actually Thursday, even though we all joined the call thinking it was Friday. We're almost there. Thank you again, everybody. And we will see you all in the next one.
Thanks, Galen. Appreciate having me.